Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Well, if this were a sane world and if this were a normal day, you know what the big news of the day would be? That Donald Trump nailed it. That Donald Trump was exactly right. That the Obama administration was, in fact, spying on them and indeed requested and got a FISA warrant. Do you realize how many people have been trying to deny that? There weren't any FISA warrants. The administration wasn't snooping on anybody. That's just made up. That's paranoia. Obama, our savior, wouldn't do that. And yet now we know that there was a FISA warrant. The Obama administration surveilling some guy named Carter Page. They found nothing, but they were looking to. They wanted to. Carter Page had done some business in Russia some time ago, and they were desperate. Obama and his team were desperate to prove that there was some kind of collusion between Russia and Trump. Now, that's kind of out the window with what's happened in Syria, but you won't find that news anywhere today. I mean, it's in the Washington Post, but normally you would hear other people pick it up. CNN, no, you know what they're talking about? In an effort to not cover any of it. The second big story is how the Democrats... Remember, we talked about it yesterday. Democrats were going to take that special election in Kansas. This guy, Estes, he was going down. Ron Estes was going down. This is the Mike Pompeo seat. Special election because Trump chose Pompeo to head up the CIA. So had a special election in Kansas to replace him. And the media yesterday was all about how, we're going to prove the Democrats are going to win this seat, proving that Trump is hated and despised and everybody wants him to go. That his agenda has been pronounced a failure, except Estes won. So they're ignoring that story. What are they focusing on? Sean Spicer and the Holocaust and that whole event yesterday and United Airlines. Those are the two things they're focusing on to avoid talking about the real world where things that really matter really happened, and once again drove another nail in the coffin that is the American left and the Democrat Party. So United Airlines. The CEO has now come out and apologized again and said after he watched the video he was outraged, found it reprehensible, all of that. Mr. Snerdley just walked in, and he was upset over something Governor Christie said. Governor Christie is the governor of New Jersey. And Governor Christie has lambasted United for doing what they did simply to make money. Come on, Governor, that's what the liberals always say when they go out and bash a corporation. That's not the way to bash this. Snerdley came in, he thinks Christie was being a hypocrite because United makes New Jersey a lot of money flying into Newark. And, of course, the state of New Jersey does everything they do to get money like every other government entity does. They'll never do with a dime less than what they have every year. So I looked at Snerdley. I said, you know what? We're going to get sidetracked on this United story. When you look at this, when you look at really what was involved here, all they had 4 crew members that were in Chicago that they needed to get to Louisville for a flight out of Louisville the next morning. And for that reason, they bumped 4 people off the plane and beat up one of them who refused to go and snuck back on. Now, I looked into any number of ways to get those 4 employees to Louisville. They could have chartered a small jet. They could have driven them down there. They could have found a bus. They could have rented a bus. They could have put them on a train. They could have did any number of things instead of what they did. And here's another thing. Now, I realize it's the more we've learned about this guy, Dr. David Dow, I mean, he is an intriguing figure. The guy is a doctor, has lost his medical license. He was getting gay guys hooked on OxyContin to keep them coming back to him, where he would hold them up for gay sex. So goes the story. When he lost his medical license, he joined the professional poker circuit and earned about $250,000 doing that. Look, folks, it's fun and it's interesting, but you realize none of that justifies what happened to the guy? Okay, so he's a kook. So he does strange things. It doesn't justify what happened to the guy. I'm not suggesting that United is behind this, but look, there are some people that want to mitigate what happened by pointing out this guy's oddities or his frailties. Here's what United needs to do. This is to solve the problem going forward. Here's what United needs to do. Right now, when you go buy a ticket to United or any airline, it's a contract. By the way, this guy met the terms of the deal. There was a seat on the plane offered for sale. He bought it. He paid for it, and he got on the plane. How many of you people have been bumped from a flight after you've been seated? They usually bump you in the gate area before anybody's been seated. So that was a little odd. But the guy met the terms of the quote-unquote contract. He purchased the ticket, and he paid the price, and for that he got a seat on the airplane. And then they come and they throw him off. What United needs to do is rewrite the contract. What do they call it? Nobody reads fine print. So make this plain and day. Here's the new deal with United Airlines if you decide to fly with them. You agree to pay the price for the seat on the airplane, and you get on the airplane realizing that you might be asked to vacate that seat, and if you don't, you could get beat up. Then if you buy the ticket, and that happens to you, then you have no recourse because you have signed a contract acknowledging you could get beat up if they try to throw you off the plane and you refuse to go. That's how this could be solved in the future if United doesn't want to change its policies. Oh, man, this is boomeranging. Now the Chi-Com Parliament has taken this up because United, I guess, wants to expand its service in China. And this guy, now what is he? Vietnamese, but he wasn't born. Was he born in Vietnam to Chinese parents, or what is it? There is a Chinese link to the guy, and a Vietnamese link as well. The Sean Spicer stuff, again, see, this is one of these things. It's much ado. Everybody knew what he was trying to say. And you know something, folks? He was asked a question. He answered it. A reporter said, wait a minute, do you maybe want to try saying that again? So Spicer said it again and clarified what he meant, and that was that. There was a delayed reaction of outrage to this. Some time passed, and I'm sure what was going on, the left was getting their ducks in a row, and they figured they had something here, so they launched a little bit. The outrage here did not occur instantaneously in the press room. You know what it reminded me of? Some of you may not know this, some of you may not remember, but for 5 weeks, I appeared on the ESPN NFL Sunday pregame show. I played the role of sort of an official. You had the main panel of people there, 4 of them, seated discussing the games coming up that day, and I was seated off to the side listening to them discuss, and if I heard something I wanted to join, that I would hit a button, and in the control room, they would have a graphic of a red penalty flag being thrown across the screen, signaling I wanted in on the discussion conversation. And the discussion was Donovan McNabb and what was wrong with him and why he wasn't playing well. So I spoke up, and I said, I think you guys are maybe giving McNabb a little bit too much credit here that he doesn't deserve. He's not played that well. The defensive at carrying the Eagles, blah, 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 blah. And I said, I think there's a bit of a racial component here, too, because I think there's a desire for black quarterbacks to do well on the part of the media. And so that's why they're wringing their hands. And Steve Young agreed, and some other people agreed, and the program ended. Nobody said a word. On the Sunday night postgame show, nobody said a word. On Monday on ESPN, nobody said a word. There was nothing controversial about what I had said. Steve Young had even agreed with it. Tom Jackson discussed it with me, argued a bit, but it ended peacefully. Nobody was angry. Nobody was upset. Nobody thought anything until 2 days later, when the Philadelphia print media, must have been 3 or 4 columns, all oriented toward the same thing about how I was a pig and all this. But it took 2 days for it to erupt. For 2 days, nobody had a thing. There was no reaction to it whatsoever anywhere in the media or in the NFL. And it's almost the same thing here with Spicer. It didn't take 2 days, but I'm telling you the reaction was not instantaneous. And everybody knew what he was trying to say. I don't want to be misunderstood here. I think when you're the press secretary for the President of the United States, you don't make mistakes like this. This is an unforced error that's not helpful and not needed. But at the same time, everybody in that room knew what he was trying to say. They know he's not a Holocaust denier. They know he's not a Hitler sympathizer. They know he's none of these things that they're trying to make him out to be. This is classic leftist and media behavior when they've got somebody that they want to take out. In this case, it's Trump. And so they'll go after anybody they can get. As they climb the ladder to get to the top of it to take Trump out, they'll go after Bannon, they'll go after now Spicer, and Saturday Night Live has been trying to destroy Spicer since the first day on the job. And this is just, it's classic. And I just wanted to mention this because they all know what he was trying to say. They know, and he just got a little bit exuberant in his attempt to support Trump going in and taking care of Assad. And he was just trying to be a loyal soldier and point out that Assad had done things to his own people that not even some of the most vicious war criminals had done. And World War I, World War II, there weren't any battlefield uses of chemical weapons. But, of course, there was all kinds of sickening stuff used in the concentration camps. And that's where they got Spicer. They made it look like Spicer didn't know that Hitler had eliminated 6 million Jews with poison gas. Whoa, what an idiot. I can't believe some guy with such a limited knowledge of history. And of course, it's absurd. It illustrates the danger here of comparing anybody to Hitler. If you're going to do it seriously, stop and think and don't do it. Because I don't care who you come up with, there's nobody that's ever going to be any worse than Adolf Hitler. Not with the generations of people who are still alive. Well, see, Stalin, but nobody saw Stalin presided over. Well, the Soviet Union, folks, has presided over the death of tens of millions of its own citizens via starvation and any number of other things. Stalin was one of the biggest murderers on the planet. Mao Zedong, same thing. All of these leftist communist leaders are mass murder. Pol Pot. They're all mass murderers. But the deaths all happened out of sight. And while Stalin was doing what he was doing, the New York Times was praising him and ignoring the deaths. A guy named Walter Duranty, a reporter for the New York Times, got a Pulitzer Prize for ignoring the mass murder committed by Joseph Stalin. The Jewish Holocaust, and referring to the concentration camps as the Holocaust centers, it was an unforced error. But I still, folks, it's important to understand here, if the same mistake had been made by Josh Earnest trying to support Obama, there wouldn't have been anywhere near. He would have been given whatever number of chances he need to say it right, to apologize. There wouldn't have been any Saturday Night Live parodies, and there wouldn't be any focused efforts by people in the media to force him out and to force Obama out. How could you hire such a lame brain? None of that would be going. Everybody would understand that Ernest, we all knew what he was trying to say. He just misspoke. But that kind of latitude is not offered to Trump people, and this is a classic example. Spicer went to the Newseum today. I was being interviewed by Greta Van Susteren, and he just totally fessed up and said it was a mistake and it was embarrassing and a very poor service to the president and so forth. You know, the president of the United States, you figure, can get the best spokesman in the world. Whoever the best spokesman is, he can get him. And these guys, the blood is in the water. While all this is going on, here's the truth of all this is that Trump is running rings around these people. Trump is having major success stories. They're not being broadcast. They're not being amplified. They're not being touted. We have tried here on the program now and then to recall some of these things. But Trump had a tweet today that he had a great phone call last night with the Chi-Com president. And if what happened in this tweet is true about mutual cooperation, mutual cooperation on economic matters, Trump will have done more in one meeting with this guy than Obama did in 8 years. It's astounding. And the Chi-Coms apparently are going to, if it's maybe premature to say, but it looks like the Chi-Coms are going to not ally fiercely and strongly with the Norks, with the North Koreans. Look, there's all kinds of things, like this special election in Kansas. I can't tell you. You look at the news headlines in the days leading up to the special election yesterday, and virtually every one of them, every headline was a dream of Democrat victory of varying size. Landslide, narrowly. It was going to be the first big dent in the Trump agenda, and they knew it was going to happen because they know even in flyover country, Trump is now hated. They had all kinds of things invested in the Democrat winning, and it didn't happen. What did happen is that Ron Estes won by, 6.8 points or something like that. And so the Democrat line is, well, yes, he won, but it was close. There's nothing positive for Trump to take away. And really nothing positive to take away. Based on your expectations, based on the way you set it up, that Trump was going to lose and be humiliated, his agenda was going to be stopped on a dime because of this election. It's a guy wins by 6.8%, and you say it's too narrow a victory to draw any conclusions from? So what else we have? We have, the FISA war. I cannot tell you how big this is. This validates what Trump was saying about his campaign being surveilled. And it's also the first time anything like this has ever happened. The Washington Post has the story, and they've got so much detail, I wonder if they've actually been leaked the actual warrant application. FISA warrants are, they're secret as grand jury testimony, but somebody has leaked this stuff to the Washington Post. A brief review of this FISA business. There were reports that there was a FISA warrant requested in June 2016. It was denied. So they went back in October, requested it again, that was granted. Then there have been total, utter denials, no FISA warrants. And then we got the news yesterday that, oh yeah, there was one. I got to take a break now, but we'll continue here just a second. And ladies and gentlemen, there's a new book coming out very, very soon. It's by Jonathan Allen and Amy Parnes. And it's a book on Hillary Clinton's failed campaign and what went on. And it focuses and highlights all of the infighting, the very low morale, the lack of trust between Hillary and many of her staffers, the intervention of Bill Clinton trying to save the day and failing, all of the heated exchanges. And the book doesn't say one thing about the Russians being responsible for any of it. It's a devastating look at the Clinton campaign, and it confirms what many people have speculated, that it was a bunch of people thinking they were guaranteed to win, nobody working really hard, nobody thinking very straight about it. It's a fascinating read. We've got that and a whole lot more coming up. All right, on this FISA story, the FISA warrant story in the Washington Post, the Washington Post says that the FISA warrant being approved or granted shows that there must have been some collusion between the Russians and Trump. And I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, do not doubt me, that is BS. What happened was the Obama administration wanted to find collusion between Trump and Russia. All last summer, they were hoping to find some collusion. There were rumblings about it. The media was talking about it. Other Democrats, they used the power of the federal government to get a FISA warrant. Do you know that FISA warrants are almost always granted. I mean, I think the percentage of FISA requests turned down is like 0.03%. I mean, it's almost automatic. You ask for a warrant from the FISA court, and it's granted all the time. I think contrary to the warrant indicating there must have been some collusion, what the warrant being sought means that Obama wanted to search for some. That the administration, somebody in the administration, Obama, dude, I'm not going to name names, but he's at the top of the executive branch, so we'll throw him in there. They wanted to find some. There wasn't any evidence of Russia collusion. All they had was these three guys. Roger Stone bragging about this and that, and they had Carter Page, who had done business in Russia long ago, and Paul Manafort, who had business in Ukraine. They were hoping all of this was on the come. They were hoping that after they got a FISA warrant, they could find some collusion. There isn't any evidence in all of these months, and even with the issuance of this warrant, there has yet to be a shred of evidence produced that there was any collusion whatsoever. So the granting of this warrant, in my humble opinion, was expressly so they could look for some, not because they thought they had some. A FISA warrant is much different than a traditional search warrant. You know, you've paid enough attention, you know that if the police want a search warrant for your house, they have to go to a judge and present at least a semblance of a reason that there is evidence to be found of your guilt. A FISA warrant is nowhere near that standard because it's foreign intelligence, surveillance, and national security and all that. It's a much wider berth. That's why they're almost never turned down. Now, all of this time, folks, and I want to remind you how many times just in the last 6 weeks have we focused on the FISA warrant aspect of this story. And every time that entered front and center in the news, there a number of media outlets and Democrats poo-pooed. No, there wasn't any FISA warrant. Comey alluded to the fact there weren't any FISA warrants here. Whenever it came up, it was always just poo-pooed. It was always just bumped out of the way. No, you're being paranoid. We didn't do any of that. There wasn't any investigation like that. You're being silly. When Trump accused Obama of tapping the wires at Trump Tower, no, there's no investigation. What are you talking about? Don't be silly. You're being paranoid. It was Louise Mensch at some rag called Heat, or I forget the place she works in, but a 5-star never-Trumper. She's Brit. And she ran the story last October. There were 2 FISA warrants. Everybody said, there's no evidence of that. There's no proof of that. You don't know that. That didn't happen, blah, blah, blah. And all of this time that they've been denying it, it's out there. There's a FISA warrant. It was issued to surveil Carter Page, who wasn't with the Trump campaign very long anyway. He was with it in the early stages. They were fishing. The guy had done business. He invested in Gazprom, a Russian energy company. So they were hoping, they desperately hoping that with the warrant they could find something. It's not that the warrant was granted because they knew, because if they knew, we would know. If they had evidence of collusion, they would be plastering it all over everywhere. So the principals in this, for weeks now and months, have been denying that anybody in the regime sought a FISA warrant. And now the Washington Post runs this story. FBI, that's the executive branch. Somebody asked the FBI to go get the warrant. You know, as I've pointed out countless times, the White House does not do investigations. The White House does not investigate national security things or crimes. The White House is a consumer of the intelligence that's produced and gathered by the FBI, the NSA, and the CIA. So if the FBI requested a FISA warrant, The odds are somebody asked them to. We don't know for sure. Somebody does, though. Somebody knows. So the Washington Post is attempting to say that the existence of the warrant means that they had evidence of collusion. They don't, or whoever colluded would have been outed by now. We would already be proceeding to impeachment. They've got nothing. They never have had anything. FBI obtained a secret court order last summer. Now, again, remember, all during the recent discussion of this, all of the denials, and not only just denials, there were people trying to ridicule and make fun of the people who said there were FISA warrants that were granted. If they were in the media, if they were, like here on talk radio, lambasted and criticized for being irresponsible, no evidence of FISA warrants, and all this time, there was one. Why were we told for so many months that all of these reports about FISA warrants were untrue? I've been trying to remember last night and this morning. Didn't the FBI director Comey testify that there was no surveillance on the Trump campaign, or was he talking about Trump Tower? And I don't remember if he said there were no warrants obtained or not. This was congressional testimony. We saw it on TV. I don't remember the specifics. But we are going to find out. The Washington Post says the FBI and the DOJ obtained the warrant targeting Carter Page's communications after convincing the FISA court judge that there was probable cause to believe Page was acting as an agent of a foreign power, in this case, Russia. Well, let's see the evidence. I'm telling you, there wasn't any evidence. They got this warrant to snoop. They were hoping that they would find evidence. All last summer, folks. I mean, Trump gets a nomination in July, and all this time, they're still, every one of these people convinced Hillary's going to win in a landslide. We've got this new book on the Clinton campaign, and you talk about a dog and pony show in the Keystone Cops. This book, the excerpts that I've seen of it and read this morning, make it crystal clear this campaign was one of the most inept and incompetent in recent memory. Filled with infighting and lack of trust, Bill Clinton trying to take over various aspects of it, Hillary having no energy, Hillary having no impetus, providing no leadership, because they all thought it was a cakewalk. So even while they thought it was going to be a cakewalk landslide win, they still are out there trying to find some kind of dirt, collusion, Trump campaign. So let's see the evidence. What secrets could possibly be being protected now? You know, the headline of this story, Obama administration spied on Trump campaign. That's the news. The media wants you to think the news is that the Trump campaign really looking now like there was collusion because we got a FISA warrant to investigate it. That's not the news. The news is the Obama administration, counter to everything the Democrats and the media were saying, was in fact spying on the Trump campaign. By the way, President Trump had a very extensive interview today with Maria Bartiromo on a Fox Business Network, the Money Honey. And it's actually quite fascinating. We have some sound bites I will get into in the beginning of the next hour. Now it's to the phones. It's Joe in Bridgeton, New Jersey, as we kick it off. Joe, thank you for calling. Great to have you here. What's up?
Wow, Rush, it's an honor. You're the best teacher ever. Rush, my question was this, Rush.
Yes.
What made him pick that fella? Well, did he draw the short straw out in the lobby, or do you think they had information? Did they look up his information?
I don't have any idea. You know, it's a good question. All we've been told, unless there's something I've missed. I have to tell you, to be very honest with you, I have not immersed myself in the in the deep down details of this story. I know that there were 4 people chosen at random. I don't know what random means.
Right.
With United Airlines. I don't know if they picked numbers out of a hat, if they went to a seating chart, put their fingers on seat numbers. I don't know if they actually knew passenger names when they did this. I have no idea. Does anybody else know? Have you guys have read this story? You do know how they picked them?
No, but that's what concerns me. I mean, it just, were they doing a background check?
It was a random computer. I've just been told, Joe, that it was random computer. There were no humans involved in choosing the 4 passengers to be thrown off and beat up.
There we go. Okay, very good. I guess that's good news.
Well, what were you thinking happened?
I was thinking they might have, not that this is a bad thing in certain circumstances, but I think they might have profiled and said, nope, this guy, he might be shaky on a flight. If somebody's got to go, let's get him.
Well, let me tell you, the guy would have been shaky on the flight. That's one thing that was uncovered here. This is why normally this kind of thing, the procedure for bumping people off flights, happens before everybody boards. It happens in the gate area. Once they put you on the plane, I've been asking people if they've ever been bumped or seen anybody bumped after everybody's been seated, after the plane's been boarded. And I haven't found anybody yet who can remember that happening, either to them or having witnessed it on a plane they were flying. So that's number one. This story has multiple levels of mystery and intrigue. Like, how did the guy get beat up? When he snuck back on the plane, he was already bloodied up. And then he got even further bloodied up when they dragged him out after he had snuck back in there. They dragged him out, and parts of his, face were banging off the legs of the seats as they dragged him out of there. As I say, United needs to change the fine print, on the tickets, the contract, to include the fact that if they randomly seek to oust you from a plane after you've been seated, that you could get beat up if you refuse to leave. And if that happens, and if you bought the ticket under those pretexts, then you have no course of action. This guy's got 2 sets of lawyers now. This, folks, he's lawyered up like you can't believe, understandably. This is going to be a huge settlement. It's not going to ever go to trial. They don't want this becoming a class. They don't want people out of the woodwork. Oh, yeah, you know what happened to me back in 1999? I was on a United flight. But they don't want any of that. In fact, I'm surprised some ambulance chaser lawyer hasn't found a bunch of people to whom United beat up, or claims that United beat up. It's something like this. It just starts boomerang and the plaintiff's bar goes nuts. This could be, approaching the tobacco settlement if they're not careful. But this guy's got 2 sets of lawyers. He's lawyered up. And I'm telling you this, too. What we've learned about the guy, here's what, and it should not matter. This is the thing. Some people, they chose the right guy. Look at this reprobate. If they're going to pick somebody off the plane, pick him. Folks, it doesn't matter. Nothing this guy did justified him being treated this way. He paid the price. He completed the deal. He got on the plane. They let him on the plane. Okay, so he gives OxyContin to gay guys to hook them on the drug to keep them coming back to him for gay sex. Now, you laugh. They're in there laughing. I'm telling you, in our culture today, this guy is going to be fascinating. There could be movies written about this guy. Movies made. This is a kind of character that not even writers could come up with. Real life outdoing fiction each and every time. And that's just one aspect of the guy. He lost his medical license, yet he had to get on that plane to go treat patients the next day who were waiting. How to get his medical license back with everything else we know. There's enough cultural degradation that people like this are gigantic curiosity figures and will automatically gain a lot of public sentiment and support because of what happened to the guy. Here is, in other words, what kind of behavior would we do not know that we would have to learn about this guy before people would think, you know what, this guy deserved to get beat up. And I'm going to tell you, that's a high bar. Okay. All right, okay. Snerdley is offering, okay, if it's learned that the guy is cruel to animals, he's going to lose some sympathy, true. If he has, like, punched his wife and dragged her out of an elevator in a New Jersey casino, that might cause him some problems. If they find out he's pro-choice, he might lose some sympathy. If they find out that he was at one time an illegal immigrant, that might redound to his favor. I mean, there's any number. The way our culture is and the way people go about examining the worth of individuals. And you know as well as I do that much of it is based on how much victimization have they suffered, how much suffering have they endured at the hands of evil majorities. So we're just at the beginning of this story. I wish I had time to get this next call in, but I don't. We've got a guy from Durham, North Carolina, wants to talk about Spicer and his comments. Yes, he's agreeing with me that everybody knew what Spicer was saying or was trying to say. But I have to take a break. The next segment, I'm going to get into some of these Trump sound bites, interview with Maria Bartiromo, because it's all about his agenda, how he's going to go about getting health care passed, tax reform passed, how he's working with Congress. You'll, I think, be interested if you didn't see it. Back here in just a second. I got a little suggestion for the People Crisis PR Operation United Airlines. Find out if this guy voted for Trump. If Dr. David Dow voted for Trump, you might have an avenue here to mitigate some of what happened. Okay, so I've been doing what I do. I watch the media here during the break. And it doesn't matter. They get Republicans and get Democrats talking about this FISA warrant. There is an automatic assumption that law enforcement never lies and that law enforcement's always in the up and up. And so, Ed Rollins, Doug Schoen, this is a serious problem. A FISA warrant granted against a member of your campaign. That's a very, very serious problem. And I would never have had anybody, when I ran the Reagan campaign, I would have never had anybody around. And Doug Schoen says, well, I don't know what. I'm telling you, this FISA warrant, they're looking at this the wrong way. It's amazing. The things like this United guy. I'm gonna tell you what I honestly think about this. Not that I've withheld anything. I'm not going to make a specific prediction, but I'm gonna wager here that we don't know the half of it yet. I'm going to wager that we're going to learn some things in time that are going to cause everybody to rethink what they think they know happened on that airplane and in that terminal. I say this because it always happens. I say this because I know how the media works. I say this because I know how stories are created, how they are amplified, how they are updated and so forth. There are certain things about this guy that are known that are not being factored in. Like, this guy has a history of exploiting situations in which he finds himself. So I'm not going to make any specific prediction, but I want you to remember that on this day, April 12th, I make the prediction that what we think we know about this, what everybody is slam dunk certain of, is not going to be what really happened when we find out everything. You just wait. This is so typical of the way things get reported in our media today. You have all the ingredients. You have big corporation, automatically a suspect in the eyes of the left and the media. You have an innocent passenger who happens to be of minority persuasion. The ingredients are all there. And I'm not, as I say, going to hazard specificity, but I'm just going to tell you that when this, and I don't know how long it's going to take, but the day is going to come where there's going to be a bunch of revelations that going to go, no kidding? Wow, I would have never guessed that. You just wait. What you think you know about this right now is not going to hold up. There's a bunch of stuff that is yet to be learned, or maybe it has been learned, but it isn't being reported. And it's the same thing in this FISA warrant. I'm struck here by the automatic reaction of establishment people. Oh, well, they got a FISA warrant. Oh, man, Trump must be guilty of something. Carter Page must be guilty of, oh, man, this is not going to be good. This isn't going to... We've been hearing this about every aspect of this. This is a real problem for Trump. This is a real problem for the campaign. And yet there haven't been any problems manifested. It turns out that everything we've been reported, everything we've been told, turns out to be no evidence for. And I'm here to tell you this FISA warrant was sought so that they could go on a fishing expedition. It was not sought because they had any evidence. But yet everybody's treating this as though, well, the guy's guilty. They wouldn't have gotten a warrant if there weren't evidence that he had done something. And I'm maintaining to you that they got the warrant to go fishing precisely because there hasn't been any evidence, and they hope to find some. Who are we talking about here? We're talking about the Obama administration, the media, and the Democrats. Who are we talking about here? We know damn well that's what they were up to, but they've been up to it right in front of our eyes for the last 6 months. Casting about, looking for crime, casting about, looking for criminal behavior, casting about, looking for bad guys that can pin it all on, casting about, trying to find ways we get rid of Trump. You wait. I'm just saying. Donald Trump appeared with Maria Bartiromo on the Fox Business Network today. We have some sound bites of this. And what is interesting is that he goes into detail here about his agenda, how he's going to get it through, he's going to get it passed, what he hopes to accomplish, how he's working with Congress. And it flies in the face of the standard day-to-day reporting that the administration is flying blind and it's aimless and there's nobody there that knows how to get anything done. They can't work with Congress, and Trump really doesn't know what he's doing because he's an outsider and he's huffing and puffing and using a lot of bluster, but it's all fake and smoke and mirrors, and this contradicts that. Let's just get started here with the first bite. There's no question because we're just picking this up in mid-answer.
We're going to have tax reform at some point very soon. I think we're doing very well on health care. It's been very much misreported that we failed with health care. We haven't failed. We're negotiating, and we continue to negotiate. And we will save perhaps $900 billion. You know, if you look at the kind of numbers that we're talking about, that's all going back into the taxes. And we have to do health care first to pick up additional money so that we get great tax reform. So we're going to have a phenomenal tax reform, but I have to do health care first. I want to do it first to really do it right. Health care has been going along. You know, it's a negotiation, so I do. And it's just a negotiation. And after that, we're going to start on tax reform and infrastructure.
So everything's still on schedule. Everything's still happening as I intended it to happen. This is what I do. I negotiate. Nothing's been stopped yet. Nothing's failed. We're still going after this. You know, he's optimistic and very purposeful here, very committed. The one thing about this that bothers me, and it bothers me when anybody in Washington says, yeah, well, we got to do health care first to come up with the money for tax cuts. No, you don't. You know, this is all predicated on the assumption that Washington can never spend less this year than it did last year. And it cannot spend less next year than it did this year. And so if we're going to have a tax cut, see, the problem, you know what the problem with this is, folks? The beloved Congressional Budget Office. Here's how the Congressional Budget Office works. If the Republicans submit a tax cut that is equal to the federal deficit, let's say they have a tax cut of $500 billion. The CBO would score that as though the government is going to lose $500 billion this year and next year and the year after that and the year after that, and thereby kill any possibility of doing that tax cut because they don't score anything dynamically. And it's even worse than that. If you're going to cut taxes by $500 billion, and I'm just choosing random numbers for the sake of discussion. When you cut taxes, federal income taxes, by $500 billion, what happens? $500 billion stays in the economy and does not go to Washington. What happens to it when it goes to Washington? Well, it doesn't create any jobs, and it doesn't produce anything, and it doesn't innovate producing anything. There aren't any new products. There aren't any new services. All that happens is the welfare state gets bigger. If you take $500 billion and let people who've earned it keep it, what do they do with it? Even if they save it, it's still in circulation in the economy. If they spend it, then it's helping whatever product or service they're buying. If they're a small business, they might hire a couple new employees. They might buy a new plant, machine, factory, whatever. It's economic activity. The more money you keep in the private sector, the more economic activity there is, the more economic growth there is, and the more of that there is, the more hiring goes on, and the more people you hire, the more people you have paying taxes. So that $500 billion tax cut does not result in the government losing $500 billion. It could end up with them earning a heck of a lot more. The CBO doesn't score it. The CBO scores it as a net loss, and that panics legislators. Oh, my God. 500. So we got to find a way to make that up. That's what Trump is falling for. It's what he's saying. Well, you know, we can't do tax cuts till we come up the money for it by saving money from health care. See, in my naive world, you could do both at the same time. And if Washington has to do with a little less, then so be it. Everybody else has to do that. What's so sacrosanct about the government never having to do with less, while forcing millions of Americans to do with less every year because of tax policy and any number of other fees and expenses they tack onto people? So the savings from Obamacare will give us great tax reform. But, you could do tax reform first. If you do it right, you could actually dynamically project based on history. You could look at the Reagan tax cuts and find out what happened. And let me remind you, when Reagan took office in 1981, the top marginal tax rate was 70%. Now, nobody paid it, but it was there. It was on the books. There were a lot of deductions, too. And so you could avoid paying 70% on a certain portion of your income if you invested in the tax shelters of the day, which the government wanted to promote. That's what shelters and deductions are. The government deciding they're going to promote charitable donation or buying a home, so you get to deduct the interest on your mortgage or whatever. So Reagan takes office. These are hard, cold facts. Takes office in 1981, top marginal rate 70%. Back in 81, the money generated by the tax code to the Treasury was about $500 billion. It sounds tiny today, 40 years ago, but it was huge at the time. So taking the top tax rate with 70%, the money generated $500 billion. When Reagan left office, 8 years later, the top marginal rate was 28%. And the amount of money generated by the tax code had doubled to nearly $1 trillion. So Reagan, in shorthand, cut taxes from 70% to 28% and doubled the amount of revenue government collected. How did it happen? Well, the tax cuts led to massive employment, economic activity, more taxpayers earning more money, paying more taxes. And even with Reagan's tax reform, the rich were paying the lion's share of income taxes, even though Reagan's tax cuts were maligned and improperly stated as tax cuts for the rich. But everybody benefited. The point is that all of this money via tax cuts that remained in the economy, which is where true innovation happens, which is where hiring happens, which is where productivity happens, which is where manufacturing happens, which is where services are, the more money there, the greater the economic activity, the greater the benefit for everybody in it, as opposed to that money going to Washington and them doing whatever they do with it. Same thing here. So you could look, if you wanted to score what a $500 billion tax cut would do, go back and look at the Reagan years and take a look at what happened and then make some very loose projections about what a similar tax cut today would do in terms of growing revenue. Do you know what this illustrated, this massive tax rate reduction from 70% to 28% and doubling the amount of revenue collected? It demonstrated that the left is really not interested in money to run the government. That's not what the tax code is to them. Now, to you and I, the tax code is to provide revenue for the government to perform its basic constitutional services and requirements. To the left, the tax code is punishment. The tax code is how they get even with their enemies. The tax code is how they go out and maximize and implement what their political strategies are, like taxing the rich, benefiting the poor, and all this. And they will admit that it's not right that a rich guy is paying 28% and a middle-class guy paying 15%. It's not right. It's not fair. Then you say to them, but look at the money generated to the government. And they say, it's not that. It's the percentages. They're not fair. So they're not interested in revenue generated to the government. Why would they be? They deficit spend, as the Republicans do. Why even worry about how much money is generated? When you look at the national debt, our spending is in relationship zero to how much we take in. Why don't they just eliminate taxes? It doesn't matter. They're going to spend the money whether they have it or not anyway, so why not let us keep everything we earn? That's how I look at it. I mean, if the tax code raises $2 trillion a year and they spend $3 trillion, then what the hell? It doesn't matter how much they raise. They're going to blow through it anyway. So don't tax us at all. Still spend the money. Just add it to the national debt. Nobody ever has to pay it back. And voila. We live in utopia. So it's a long way around saying I understand what the president's saying here, but I disagree that you have to do health care first in order to find the money to do tax cuts. That's not what you have to do. You have to commit to the government doing with a little less. You have to commit to the idea that government's got much more than it needs, that it's spending much more than it has to, because they're redundant programs left and right, same programs, spending 3 times on the same projects, same people. The solution here is the government getting smaller, but that's never on the table. And somebody needs to put it there. We'll be back. Don't go away. And we will return to the Trump Soundbites in mere moments, but I get back to the phones here. This is Joe in Durham, North Carolina. Welcome, sir. Great to have you on the EIB network.
Yeah, Rush, I just wanted to say when Sean Spicer talked about Hitler not using poison gas, I knew immediately that he was talking about using poison gas in a military setting. My relatives from that far back are Polish Jews, so I lost people in the camps. He used gas in the camps to murder people, but he did not use gas in a warfare setting.
Yeah, and you knew that's what Spicer meant.
Yes.
Well, here's the thing about this. He made his statement, and somebody in the press corps said, Sean, wait a minute. You want to explain that? So he did it again, and after he explained it, nothing. The delayed reaction was about a half hour, 45 minutes. And I'm sure the media people got together. Do you realize what this guy said? Do you believe this? Do you believe this? This guy doesn't know that Hitler gassed people in a camp. Do you believe this? And that's all it took. My point is, his original statement, everybody knew what he was trying to say. Look, do not mistake me here. I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing here is telling you that the outrage here, a lot of it is way out of proportion because they knew what he meant. He should have said it better. He shouldn't have even gone there. It's, as a media figure of countless years, there are just certain things you learn. There's no there when you start invoking Hitler. This is why the left can do it. The left can call Bush Hitler, and they can call Trump Hitler. But we can't. We can't bring it up. Can't go anywhere near it. And it's a double standard, but it doesn't get you anything. What Spicer was trying to be super loyal and supportive of what Trump did in Syria, because he's got a media there that are trying to destroy Trump every day and trick Spicer and trip him up and mischaracterize and misstate what Trump's doing, trying to expose that Trump's a liar, is dishonest. And Trump really ticked him off when he went into Syria and had so much public support for it and did it so well. That miffed them. Plus, it also demonstrated that he wouldn't have done that if there had been close ties with Putin. So by going into Syria with the 59 Tomahawks, he blew up a giant media dream. So somebody had to pay the price for that, and that was Spicer. But he brought it on himself. He knows it. That's why he's been apologizing. Not enough time for another call. We've got things backing up again. It usually happens here because news never stops, but we are on top of it. And back to the phones we go. Arthur in Somerville, New Jersey. Welcome. Great to have you, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, Rush. Regarding the United incident, suppose the pilot had gotten on the microphone and said that because of a passenger not willing to get off the plane, we're all going to be delayed 3 hours. What do you think the reaction?
Oh, I think the passengers would have beat the guy up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. Yeah, in other words, what are you supposed to, if somebody doesn't want to go in the future now, if somebody doesn't want to get off the plane, what are you supposed to do? Say, okay, I'm sorry, everybody go home?
Well, you mean the crew?
Yeah, no. Yeah, suppose a passenger, another incident occurs where a passenger, for whatever reason, doesn't want to get off the plane. What happens? Does everything just stops? Or do they get the person off the plane? Whether they shoot him, or how do they get him off the plane?
Well, look, the league. I'm not sure what are you suggesting that what United should do in the future is if somebody refuses to get off the plane that they're just not going to do the flight, just announce the flight's canceled?
Well, what do they do if the person doesn't want to get off the? Suppose the person is unruly.
Well, they call the cops.
Some kind of danger.
They call the cops. The airline can't arrest anybody. They have to call the cops.
Right, exactly. They have to call the cops to get the guy off. So what happens? In the meantime, everybody's delayed.
Exactly.
How do you think the people are going to react to that? As you said, if they had made that announcement, the passengers themselves would have hit the guy over the head with a bat and thrown him off the plane.
Well, it's possible. I mean, if the captain is, ladies and gentlemen, there's an unruly passenger, and then name the seat number, who refuses to deplane, and until he deplanes, we can't push back. And until the passenger is off the airplane, we can't move. So, yeah, the passengers at some point would take matters in their own hands and turn against the guy. Well, they have to call the cops. They can't. The CEO may say they're not going to call the cops, but if they need to arrest somebody, they can't. Only the cops can. That's another little factor here. Folks, I'm just telling you. I don't know what it is, but there's a whole bunch of this that we don't know yet. And when we find out what we don't know, the entire complexion of this story is going to change. You wait. It always happens. We're talking about the media here, for crying out loud. Now, I've also been looking into the bump procedure. We have said earlier on the program today that it's computer random. I've been thinking about it. If it's a computer, it isn't random. They know, for example, who their best customers are. They know who their gold card or whatever, who members of their little flight club are. They know, for example, if somebody on the flight has a connector to an international flight. They're not going to bump those people, I guarantee you. They're not going to bump people that buy first class or business class frequently, even though this airplane didn't have those. This was a puddle jumper jet. But they know who their customers are. That mom of two kids, right? They're not going to bump one of the kids. They might bump mom, but they're not going to bump one of the kids. So when they say it's random, but they know who their best customers. They know if they got a first-time flyer. They know that if they have somebody that doesn't usually fly United on there. They know who would be the least damage in making mad. So they're not going to make a great, constantly good-paying customer mad. They're not going to throw an international traveler off if he's got a connect. Now, granted, you're not going to fly international out of Louisville, but I'm just saying they know who's on the plane, and they know what their customer level is. So saying it's random computer generated is not a cop-out, but it's a way of claiming that there's no human bias involved in who gets chosen. There's also, do you think that the airline and every passenger manifest, do you think that the passenger manifest contains such things as this passenger has a history of troublemaking on board? Do you well, I don't know if they've got it. I'm sure there are experts out there that are going to tell, oh, yeah, Russia, I've been thrown off, and they told me that they had evidence that I was going to create trouble up there. I don't know how much is known. But, again, if whoever finds out, Oh, the public won't care about that. If the public's going to get concerned about what secret databases contain information on there, a little about like 5 years late to the party here. Some people would probably be upset. Folks, I'm so confident that we don't know the half of this. And that there is factual news that we will someday learn that's going to change the way the majority of people see this episode. You watch. No, I don't have an inside track. I don't know anybody involved in this. I don't know anything. I've never heard of anybody involved. I know the media. I know the rush to judgment tendencies. I know the mob mentality. I know all of the biases involved here. You have a corporation that is destroying the planet, United Airlines. You have a corporation, period. Evil, distrusted, despised, mean-spirited, doesn't like people, doesn't care if its customers die, like the tobacco industry or whatever. This is a general profile that leftists have of corporations. So you know that going in. You also know, we have enough experience to know that sometimes people the media choose to champion turn out to be unworthy of it. I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but there are plenty. If I took the time to research it, I could give you some. I'm sure I can find some great examples of just this kind of thing where a story happens that captivates the attention of the public. And in a short period of time, the full story ends up being reported, and it changes entirely the perception people had of the people involved and of the reporting in general. Well, how many stories have we had of politicians accused of doing one thing or another? It turns out they haven't done it. Look at Ray Donovan, the labor secretary with Nixon or Reagan or whatever. Reputation was totally destroyed in court, and he was exonerated by a jury in 30 minutes. But the media destroyed him in the months leading up to it. And he said, "Where do I go to get my reputation back?" I mean, these things are relatively common. Who's next? Brad Cleveland. Great to have you on the EIB network, sir. Hello.
It's Fred from Cleveland Rush, but that's okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine. You're right. It's Fred. I didn't have my glasses on there, and it's just misread it, Fred. My bad.
Hey, that's all right. Okay, I have a different view on things. I'm a fellow student of the EIB. I live in Reelville, and my big picture, I see Trump winning all over the place. No one sees it. I have a feeling that Putin is going to give up Assad. I have a feeling Obamacare is going to be repealed within the next month or two. I think there's going to be an avalanche in the CIA of whistleblowers and the FBI. There's too many good people working for the government that can keep secrets and keep quiet. They're going to start coming forward. It's all falling apart for the Democrats. They're stalling for time, and they're just about out. The Russia thing with Trump is over and done. The investigation should be called off.
Well,
we're seeing the difference right now between an agitator-in-chief and a commander-in-chief. That's what we're seeing, a leader and a follower.
Well, who's the agitator-in-chief right now?
No, I'm saying what we dealt with for 8 years. President Obama,
okay.
The agitator-in-chief.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear you say. You could have been thinking of a media person.
Oh, I'm sorry for not being clear.
That's all right. So you think, let me summarize, you think that Trump is just going to blow everybody away and win everything, and it isn't going to be long And the Democrats are going to be embarrassed and humiliated, and every effort they are engaging in to destroy Trump's going to backfire on them.
Yes, 100%. I think Chuck Schumer will be running from the cameras. Hillary Clinton will be running back to the woods. President Obama won't be coming back to Washington. He'll do everything he can to stay away. Because what I saw when the transition took place was their lack of preparedness for Trump to win. So they could not hide all their illegalities over the 8 years because they were so confident that Hillary was going to take over, and then they could take their time and wipe the slate clean. They didn't have enough time with Trump's election, and they all know it. Obama knows it. Rice knows it. They're panicking.
You have stumbled into something. When you said that they were not prepared for Trump winning, I think that is just shy of profound in the implications. They weren't prepared for Trump winning, and so they've been blindsided by a lot. And they are reacting to everything Trump's doing in panic. But I like your confidence. I know what he's saying. He thinks that eventually we're going to get Obamacare repealed. We're going to get the tax cuts, that Trump is going to prevail. He's going to figure everything out, figure out how he needs to do this and do that to get it done. He's in the process of this happening, and the Democrats have nothing to fall back on because everything they've done is not based in reality and substance and so forth, and so it's flimsy, it can fall apart. I like the thinking. And I know a lot of people hoping that a circumstance or situation like you've described does eventuate. We'll see. I have to confess that I am more like this guy than I am anywhere like any detractors. I really am, folks. I'm not nearly as troubled by these day-to-day little spitballs they're launching at the guy. I have an inexplicable optimism about how most of this is going to turn out. No, it wasn't. Why should I be? We're not trouble at North Korea. Come on. You actually, how could the Norks precipitate a world war? China is not going to risk their massive economic growth and the advantage they think they are gaining over. They're not going to risk any of this by taking action in defense of the Norks that would result in a genuine world war. Nobody is that dumb. That just isn't going to happen. The Chinese are not. I mean, they may be predisposed to defending the Norks, but if it really comes to a shooting war, the Norks can't last a day if that happens. The Norks can't last 20 minutes if that happens. And the Chi-Coms are not going to hit us. I guarantee this, if there's action taken against the Norks, we probably wouldn't even do it without assurances and an agreement with the Chi-Coms for the aftermath and to divvy it up and so forth. That scenario, the Norks leading to a world war, is not something I foresee. But again, I don't work at a big Washington think tank, so you have to take what I say with a grain of salt. Okay, just off the top of my head, folks, I've thought of 4 stories that turned out to be the exact opposite of how they were originally reported and how everybody thought. First, Duke lacrosse. Remember how that was first reported? These evil, white, rich lacrosse players, they savaged and they tricked a poor black dancer to come in, and then you know what it turned out to be the whole thing. Every bit of it was made up. University of Virginia rape story courtesy of Rolling Stone just today. Rolling Stone settles with UVA dean in defamation case. Rolling Stone totally made up a story about an imaginary series of rapes. Trayvon Martin, Tawana Brawley, and, of course, the gentle giant, the hands up, don't shoot thing, which they're still lying about. So I'm just saying that this United Airlines story is not, this isn't it. There are going to be other things that we learn, and this whole story's entire focus and energy is going to change. It's going to be different. Okay, I may already be on the way to being proven right here, folks. Too soon to say. Looking into it right now. Be back here and explain all this in mere moments. All right, I'm going to give you another example of exactly what I'm talking about. The past, well, if you include today, the past day and a half. You know, when Tillerson arrived yesterday in Moscow, the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, shows up in his little Boeing 737. So tiny, I had to make note of it yesterday. What was the news? The news was that Putin was not going to meet with him, that Putin was going to stiff Tillerson, that Tillerson was going to have to meet with some underling, like the Russian ambassador or the foreign secretary, or whatever it was. Now, who in their right mind believed that? Snerdley, you seem to think we go to a World War IV or whatever over North Korea. Did you believe that Putin said that he wasn't going to meet with Tillerson, that he actually wasn't going to meet with Tillerson? Please. He was always going to meet with Tillerson, and in fact, they did meet today for 2 hours. Yesterday was a bunch of, I don't know who started the smoke. Probably Putin. I refuse to meet with capitalist pig oil executive. No way. And the media, oh man, this is great. Putin doesn't like Trump. Oh, wait, we don't like that, do we? Okay, Putin's going to embarrass Trump. We like that. We like that. So they report that Putin isn't going to meet with Tillerson. Right. Tillerson is going to take a little Boeing 737 to land in Moscow to be stood up. You don't go if you're going to be stood up. At this level, you don't go. You don't land. You don't go there and speak to an underling. I knew it was never true that Putin wasn't going to speak to Tillerson. I also knew that Putin and Tillerson were going to speak, and it was going to be reported as a productive and good meeting. Because I also know that what Trump is doing is an actual reset with the Russians right now, and the hit of Assad in Syria is part of it. And this is not a Hillary Clinton reset with a plastic little red button meant to be symbolic. This is a genuine reset and establishment of who the big dog is in this relationship, and it's us. The days of us kowtowing like Obama did are over. All you have to do is listen to Trump. It's not hard. Just accept that he means what he says. It's hard because in politics you normally don't do that. You don't believe what they say. So now Tillerson and Lavrov are having their joint news conference, and the media's beside it. Says, "Oh, I'm going to do a 2-hour meeting. Wow." And then everybody was saying it was productive. Of course it was going to be. There wouldn't have been a landing if Tillerson wasn't going to meet with them. This is statecraft 101. If you're going to go to Russia and the head honcho is going to stiff you and is saying so, and you believe it, you don't land. You cancel a meeting. You pull out. You don't go there and get stood up. And look at our media thinking that we would do that. They're so conditioned to Obama and the way he behaved, and they're so conditioned to thinking the world hates America, like, well, that it would be totally understandable for Putin to hate Trump and not want any part of Trump, want to show Trump up, want to let Trump know who the big dog is. And they fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. So this is another example of exactly what I'm talking about with the United Airlines story. And on that, by the way, greetings and welcome back. It's Rush Limbaugh here at the EIB Network. There's a little update to the story. It doesn't quite fulfill my prediction, but it gets us on the road to fulfillment. Are you ready? UK Daily Mail. I'm staying. You'll have to drag me off this airplane, says Dr. David Dow to the cops. Dr. Dow then tells the person he's talking to on the phone, I tell you, make a lawsuit against United Airlines. There's another tape that has surfaced, another passenger tape, and the passenger in question here, Dr. David Dow, is seen arguing with police and a flight attendant in the new video. The new video shows some of what happened just before he was dragged off the plane. In the clip, the police officer is heard telling Dr. Dow he's going to have to drag him off. Dow says, I won't go. I'm a physician. I have to work tomorrow, 8 o'clock. The tense moment where Dr. Dow argued with Chicago cop just seconds before being humiliatingly hauled off an overbooked flight has been captured on camera. The new video, recorded by a female passenger sitting directly behind Dr. Dow, starts with a flight attendant and a cop standing in the aisle. The doctor is seen gesturing with his arm toward the cop while talking on his cell phone. He is heard saying, I won't go. I'm a physician. I have to work tomorrow, 8 o'clock. Dr. Dow then tells the person he's talking to on the phone, I tell you, make a lawsuit against United Airlines. The officer is then heard in the video again asking Dr. Dow to leave. Dr. Dow says, no, I'm not going, shaking his head angrily. You have to drag me, Dr. Dow said just before the incident occurred. And the cop on the video is heard saying, well, if I have to drag you, you know how this is going to end up happening, right? Dow then replies, you can drag me. I'm not going. I'm staying right here. You'll have to drag me. The cop then says, I'm just telling you, it's going to be a lot harder for you. Before Dow interrupts with, yes, I know that. I'd rather go to jail. You'd rather go to jail than just getting off, the cop says, while sounding confused. Yes, Dr. Dow is heard saying. The two then continue speaking for a few more seconds, with Dr. Dow mentioning he had flown to Chicago from Los Angeles, was desperate to get home before the video cuts off. So, Just a minor little update there. It just shows there's more to this than what we know. And I predict to you there's going to be even more to this than what we know. Let's see this. Spicer, been there, done that. This is an interesting story from the New York Times. The headline, Trump's shift on Russia brings geopolitical whiplash. Now see, what's wrong? What is wrong with that? The presumption here is that Trump's launching 59 Tomahawks into Syria and knowing that Syria is a Soviet or Russian client state, this represents Trump turning on a dime from his friend and buddy and ally Putin into now somebody taunting and pressuring Putin. So the New York Times categorizes this as geopolitical whiplash because Trump is shifting in his sympathies toward Russia. You know what the headline really ought to be? Media shift on Trump-Russian collusion brings reader whiplash. We're the ones with whiplash because we've been told all these months that Trump and Putin are practically blood brothers and they have some kind of friendship, BFFs for long standing, and they're working together to undermine the Democrats and whatever it is. And then all of a sudden, after months and months of that, Trump does something totally out of character with that assessment. And the New York Times says, wow, geopolitical whiplash as Trump has turned on Putin. Trump didn't turn on Putin. He's never been part of Putin. He's never been a Putin BFF. It's the reader that has whiplash trying to keep up with all this. I'm going to tell you what we're looking at here. We're witnessing the normalization of a cover-up of a massive political scandal. The massive political scandal is the illegal domestic spying of a political opponent and the dissemination of private and classified information. That is the massive political scandal. And we now have evidence that there has been a massive political scandal, even further evidence by learning that there was indeed a FISA warrant sought by the Obama FBI to surveil Carter Page. Well, let me tell you about Carter Page. So you just know you can have this at your disposal. Carter Page worked in Moscow for Merrill Lynch more than 10 years ago. His crime seems to be that he invested in a company called Gazprom. It's a massive Russian energy company. Natural gas and oil. Podesta of the Hillary campaign, John Podesta, has invested in another Kremlin-run energy firm, but nobody cares about him. He is invested with Russian energy company, too, as Carter Page did. Do you know that Carter Page never had any official association with the Trump campaign? He was a volunteer. And he never met Trump? Did you know that? He never met Trump, barely talked to Trump, and yet they're going after this guy as part of the Trump campaign who was colluding with the Russians. They got a FISA warrant to surveil this guy, and I'm telling you, folks, it's not because they had any evidence. They were looking for evidence. They were desperately looking. They were searching everywhere for evidence to support this wild-ass claim of theirs that Putin and Trump had colluded to stake the election away from Hillary. They were looking for it. They didn't have any. That's why they had to go get a FISA warrant. You don't need any evidence for one of those. But if you go to a standard everyday judge, you have to have some indication of guilt or complicity before you can get search warrants. They didn't do that. They went to the FISA court, keeping it away and hidden from everybody, where warrants are automatically granted practically. That's the scandal. The scandal here is that the surveilling of the campaign of a presidential candidate on behalf of that candidate's opponent, in this case Hillary, and then the leaking of classified information and national security information to the media in an effort to destroy the transition and then the presidency of this particular. That's the scandal here. And the news that a FISA warrant was granted, to me, advances that cause. Not that Trump must have done something wrong. There's a warrant, which is how the media and everybody wants you to look at this. Folks, thanks to the Washington Post report, here's what we know. The Washington Post report that the Obama FBI sought this FISA warrant to surveil Carter Page, a volunteer who had been in Russia 10 years prior. We now know that the Obama regime has known since July of last year that there was no evidence of any Russian collusion. That's what this tells us. Since last July, they got a FISA warrant looking for evidence. Why didn't they come forward and put an end to that disinformation campaign by our media, the DNC? Why didn't that happen? Because that's not the agenda. Let's take a brief timeout. I got a lot of people on the phones I still want to get to, and I do have some more of these Trump sound bites with Maria Bartiromo after this. All coming up. Don't go away. No. Let me be perfectly clear. I got a couple of emails. I haven't made myself clear on this FISA warrant business. Here's what's going on, folks. The Obama administration asked the FBI to go to the FISA court and get a warrant to surveil Carter Page, the only guy they could find to have any connection with Russia. He had worked there for Merrill Lynch. He was a volunteer. He barely even knew Trump, but he had been to Russia. They were desperate to find something. The purpose of this, and this is the nub of it, they were looking for somebody that they could pretend was acting as a foreign agent in order to get the surveillance warrant so that they could then turn around and spy on the whole campaign. And once they have that FISA warrant, then they can go out and surveil all these foreign actors like the Russian ambassador and incidentally pick up other people in the Trump campaign on purpose. You couldn't get a warrant to surveil Flynn, but you could get a warrant to surveil. The NSA would do it as a matter of practice, the Russian ambassador, anybody he talks to. So if he talks to Flynn or anybody else at campaign, since you've got the warrant already looking into evidence of collusion, then now you're just looking for more. But the real purpose was to get that warrant issued on Carter Page, which opened every door there was. They could then spy on the entire campaign, not just Page. There's no doubt this is what was going on. Trump nailed it. He was exactly right in his claim that he was being surveilled. That's what today's news, the Washington Post, cements. Here's Mike in Long Island, down in New York. It's great to have you with us. Appreciate your patience, too. How are you doing?
Hi, Rush. Pleased to talk to you. Thank you very much for taking my call.
You bet.
I have a story, goes back about a year and a half, of my wife and I and another couple. This goes to Medford, Oregon, a small airport, Rogue Valley, United Airlines, where all four of us were bumped off a United flight. Turns out it was a connecting flight that was supposed to go, first of all, to San Francisco, and then I was going to change planes to come back home to Long Island. Well, as it turns out, the four of us, two couples, we were the last online. And you know how it goes. You got a board nowadays by zone. I think we were zone 3. And we get to the gate. We never got on the plane. And the girl, the attendant at the gate, said, "Hold on, you guys stop a minute." And I happened to notice that crew people, got on the plane. There was no explanation about what was going on. We were just told to hold for a couple of minutes.
Right.
Well, as it turns out, she said, "Well, you guys are getting bumped." So I said, "What do you mean we're getting bumped?" The flimsy excuse she gave us at first was that the plane had a weight problem and it was overweight. And
insinuating that you were obese, huh?
Well, we're not. Anyway, she wouldn't allow us to board. So they offered us a compensation, I believe it was $100 each, which I thought was kind of ridiculous considering that we were going to get bumped. And the next flight out, by the way, this was about 10 o'clock in the morning, and the next flight out wasn't going to be until about 5. and that was only going to Frisco. Now, Medford is a small airport. There's only a small amount of flights coming in and out. There's Delta, there's Alaska, and there's United. The Delta and the United flights had come and gone. This was the only one, and the next flight out was going to be about 5 p.m. So, to make a long story short, she gave us our $100. We found out that we had gotten bumped, not because of weight, but because of the issue with the crew, just like this poor guy in those 4 people in Chicago.
They had to get crew to San Francisco for a totally different flight that crew had to be on the next day.
Yes, I guess that's the story. Anyway, you wanted to speak to a manager about it. First of all, we didn't like the idea of being bumped. And second of all, how come it was only a $100 compensation? Well, the manager would not speak to us. Now, you could see the poor girl that was at the gate.
Poor woman.
Poor woman, excuse me.
Yeah.
There were tears welling up in her eyes because she knew that they had done us wrong. And, well, we couldn't do anything. We went back to my daughter's house. She lives in Medford. And fortunately, she was home. She drove us back to the flight we got bumped to, 5 o'clock. We went to Frisco. There were no return flights to New York. We had to take a hotel for the night. Of course, United didn't pay for the hotel. And that was it. We just got bumped. There was no volunteer arrangement that we were asked voluntarily.
Yeah, you got bumped because you were the last to arrive. And
that's exactly right. That's my feeling. And what I didn't like was the lie they told us about the weight. In actuality, it was the issue with the crew.
Right. Yeah, don't imagine that they would want to tell you that was the real reason.
Yeah, but it was obvious. They had walked in right in front of us.
Did they ever tell you something like, hey, it's not that bad. Medford's a much nicer place than Long Island anyway?
No, they never said that. Medford's a nice place, but I like it home.
Yeah. Well, look, you know, these stories are legion and numerous. They're all over the place. It's part of flying commercial. Getting bumped or being asked to get off the airplane or whatever. And do I feel sorry for? Yeah, but you know, when you look at the whole, what did they have to do? Both in this case in Chicago with the flight to Louisville, and your example from Medford to it's San Francisco, by the way. People who say Frisco are generally an organized crime. Now, I don't want to assume that about you. But the issue of getting crew, let's look at Louisville for Chicago. They could have chartered, United could have chartered a little jet for $4,000 or $5,000 and put their crew on. They could have put their crew in a car. They didn't need the crew in Louisville till the next day. What United was actually doing here was a quest to save money. It's a little bit different than making a profit. They were trying to save money, and now look at how much this is going to cost them versus the simple solutions they had. Couple more Trump sound bites here. This, again, from Maria Bartiromo on the Fox Business Network. Mornings with Maria is the name of the program. She says, did you have to do health care before tax reform? When I speak with business managers, they say tax reform is much more impactful.
They're all right, but because I'm saving a tremendous amount, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars we're saving on health care. So we're going to have a much better plan than Obamacare, which is failing. Even now, as I came in here, they're saying payments have to be made that weren't scheduled to be made on Obamacare. If you don't make them, it fails. I mean, you know, it's just a mess. Obamacare is a total mess. So we're saving tremendous amounts of money on health care when we get this done. Number one, and most importantly, actually, we're going to have great health care, and all of that saving goes into the tax. If you don't do that, you can't put any of the savings into the tax cuts and the tax reform.
Now, look, it's basically a repeat of the first bite we played, and the premise is I can't do tax reform unless I have the money to cut taxes that I'll get from reforming Obamacare, repealing it and reforming it. Now, I understand that this could be the way the president is trying to light a fire under Congress. And make no mistake, the president faces opposition from the professional political class in Washington. They don't want him to succeed. I interviewed Louis Gohmert, who is a member of the House of Texas, yesterday after the program for the upcoming Limbaugh letter, the most widely read political newsletter across the fruited plain. And I got Louis to admit that there are Republicans in the Washington establishment who are not crazy about Trump succeeding. He didn't name names, and he didn't say it's a lot of them. It's all of the Democrats. But the point is, it's not so much Republican versus Democrat in this circumstance. It's establishment versus outsider. And there's one thing that was present during the campaign that hasn't changed, and that is the idea that, well, we're the experts. We establishmentarians, we're the experts. We know how this works. We know how to get things done. You can't just walk in here and be an expert in how things happen here. You have to pay your dues. Just like you don't walk into the New York Yankee locker room and expect to be a starting pitcher if you've never played a game before. Well, it's the same thing here in the establishment. And they can't afford for Trump to succeed unless it looks like he needed them to do it. And he knows this. He's got to find a way around this. Is much of what his interview today was about, actually, although not naming opposition in his own party based on establishment. But it's all part of the mix. So he may well fully understand that he doesn't need to cut Obamacare first in order to have money for a tax cut. But he may be using their language as a means of communicating with them in order to force something on health care, because that is an objective. That's as big a campaign promise as tax reform was. And saying to them, establishment language is, well, we can't cut taxes until we find somewhere to make up the difference. So Trump, speaking their language, is exactly right. So we need to replace Obamacare to come up with the money for the tax cut. That's language they understand. I hope that's what he's doing. Because, folks, as far as you and I are concerned, we don't need to come up with replacement money for a tax cut. The tax cut is going to create more money. The tax cut is going to generate all kinds of new revenue by creating new jobs, which creates new taxpayers. The next bite, again, doesn't come from a question because we're taking it in progress.
Healthcare is going to happen at some point. Now, if it doesn't happen fast enough, I'll start the taxes. But the tax reform and the tax cuts are better if I can do healthcare first.
What about infrastructure? How do you see it?
100%.
When do you see it?
Very soon. I see it as part, perhaps, of the healthcare plan, because phase 2 of the healthcare plan, in order to get the votes, I need 60% for that. And if I put that in, the Democrats are actually going to love the infrastructure plan. So we're going to actually, I believe, despite their tremendous hostility for years, this isn't just for Trump. This is for years. It's been so hostile. The level of hatred is incredible. And I'm not just saying in the last 90 days. I'm saying this has been for the last few years.
Bingo. Exactly right. And the hatred extends to not letting him succeed. The hatred extends to the point of having him fail. They can't have some outsider come in here and run rings around them. They can't have somebody like Trump come in here and demonstrate how you can get things done rather quickly after years and years of the experts telling us, well, you just don't understand. We need the House, and then we don't have the House. We need the Senate. We don't have the Senate. We need a White House. So all that rigmarole. And he comes in and he starts moving at he's at Roadrunner pace here already. And they aren't used to this. He's right about the hatred. This infrastructure, I have to tell you, I'm fascinated by this whole concept of public-private partnership. I can see, I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'll give an example. The wall. I heard, we had yesterday that the Trump budget, there's not going to be any money appropriated for the wall. They're just going to stiff Trump. There's not going to be any wall. Omnibus budget, regular budget, there aren't going to be any. Well, I'm here to tell you the wall's going to get built. They're already taking bids. Companies are already submitting designs. And if you look at maybe a public-private partnership on the wall, okay, so you build a wall and you put observation decks up there, or you put hot tubs or suites or maybe overnight accommodation. You make the wall a tourist attraction where people can come stay overnight and watch the Border Patrol keep them out or whatever happens there. Can you just see the Marriott Border Wall Suites Hotel? Or better yet, the Ritz-Carlton Border Protection Wall 5-star hotel with a series of suites all along the top of the wall. Remember, I don't know, just an example here, but public-private partnership on infrastructure repair, there's no question we need it. And I can see infrastructure being coupled with tax cuts to generate economic growth and have some of the growth result from the modernization of airports and roads. And I know this is how he's thinking. I mean, he's not said that to me, but I just know that's how he's thinking. And getting private, as in corporate participation. Hell, folks, you know that there are rich guys that will build entire wings to a hospital if you let them put their name on it. You know, the Anastas Mikoyan Cancer Research Center at Sloan Kettering Satellite Cancer Service, and whatever. People will pay as long as they can get their name on it for posterity. Like Alice Tully Hall at Lincoln Center. Who's Alice Tully? I don't know, but now everybody knows who's the name. They made a concert hall there and they put her name on it somehow. There's any number of ways you can get money from the private sector to participate in some of these projects where there may not be enough federal money for it. And these are the kind of things that establishmentarians would never dream of doing, particularly people like Obama who've never worked in the private sector and therefore have, very much resentment, distrust of it in the first place. Chris in Dallas, it's great to have you with us, sir, at EIB Network. How are you doing?
Doing great, Rush. Mega Kansas City Royals dittos to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for taking the call.
You bet.
Just one thought I had was, can you imagine the uproar if the tables were turned and it was 2008 and George Bush had used the FBI to have surveillance on Barack Obama pre-election? Can you imagine the uproar from the media? We would still be talking about it.
There wouldn't be anything else edging it off the front page for day after day after day. Even for that matter, if what would have happened, do you think, if the Obama administration was doing all this but against Hillary instead of Trump?
That's a good question.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That would present the media with a definite dilemma because they love Hillary. They love Obama more. But if it came to protecting anybody, they would always choose to protect Obama. The Obama historical election and legacy is paramount. Mrs. Clinton would become chump change to some of them. And then imagine if someday, if let's say it's 2020, and the Democrats amazingly nominate Elizabeth Warren, and they find Trump gets a FISA warrant to surveil Elizabeth. Can you imagine what happened then? Yeah, so your analogy is good. I appreciate the call. We're fast approaching the end of today's program. I didn't get into detail. I did mention this book on the Hillary Clinton campaign. It's great. It just makes mincemeat. It explains why they lost, and it doesn't mention Russia once. By Jonathan Allen and Amy Parnes. So we'll get into that tomorrow. But the dysfunction and the arguing and the bickering and the arrogance, it makes perfect sense that they lost when you read. And these are the kind of things they knew during the campaign. They just kept it for the book afterwards. So at the Tillerson Russian guy press conference, Andrea Mitchell blurts out a question when they sit down, and the Russian guy says, "Who brought you up? Who taught you your manners? That's very rude. Sit down." Andrea Mitchell, put in her place by a communist.